Hello and most welcome to Heidegger 1827. And we will today continue with Warren Goldfarb's Wittgenstein on fixity of meaning. Last lecture with Goldfarb was 1822. And then we looked into propositions and a new way of seeing language as being propositionless, this very difficult word, and how the mistaken picture can lead us to the belief that there is or there are ready-made meanings already in language, sort of being underneath language. Very close to the Chomskyan idea of a universal grammar, of pre-made a priori rules. That is, of course, the fixity of meaning that Warren Goldfarb is referring to. We also start looking at the Tractarian idea of facts being independent and connected to words in a vacuum. I think Goldfarb called it a vacuum of facts. And how language in a one-to-one relationship depicts the world. One connects everything in the world with everything else. I will now continue on page 86 in the original, or page 12 in the PDF. All that can be said.
No, as a theory.
There are two circumstances. There's one there, yeah. All that can be said generally about practices is that if the need arises, there ordinarily would have to be some number of descriptions that we could bring in. And some or most of them might be at stake depending on the particular circumstances. As a theory, of course, this is little more than when we use a name, we ought to have something to say about it. But what we have to say and with what tenacity depend on the case at hand and the nature of the calls for clarification. And that is not much of a theory. Wittgenstein's point, of course, is not to present a theory. It is rather to unravel what leads to one. Four, presuppositionless. Wittgenstein's next tactic in paragraph 80 is to challenge directly the picture of the presuppositionlessness of language. In particular, the notion that our claims have a content that fits them out for work, no matter how the world is. He presents the scenario of a repeatedly disappearing and reappearing chair and asks, have you rules ready for such cases? Rules saying whether one may use the word chair to include this kind of thing. But do we miss them when we use the word chair? And are we to say that we do not really attach any meaning to this word because we are not equipped with rules for every possible application of it? The word chair is humdrum. To question our understanding of it would be mad. Yet, assuming the example is convincing, we find circumstances in which our understanding of the word does not tell us what to do. What verdict to give on the applicability of the word. We simply do not know in the imagined case how to use the word. Yet that does not force us to think of our language as insufficient. The lesson is that if enough about the world goes awry, our words may fail. Nothing about the words as we have them now tells us how to go on with them in extraordinary circumstances like those. This, of course, goes directly against the picture of presuppositionlessness that the method of portrayal of the world by language must be independent of all facts. And hence it goes against that which greases the slide from the plain facts about our practices with names to the demand for fixity of meaning. the point that words may fail if the world goes too much awry was also made by John Austin using more picturesque examples. If we have made sure that it is a goldfinch and a real goldfinch, and then in the future it does something outrageous, we don't say we were wrong to say that it was a goldfinch. We do not know what to say. Words, literary, fails us. Suppose that I live in harmony and friendship for 4 years with a cat, and then it delivers a philippic. We ask ourselves, perhaps, is it a real cat or is it not a real cat? Either it is or it is not, but we cannot tell which. Actually, that is not so. Neither it is a real cat, nor it is not a real cat fits the facts. Each is designed for other situations than this one. You could not say the former of something which delivers philippics, nor yet the latter of something which has behaved as this has for 4 years. Ordinary language breaks down in extraordinary cases.
Austin continues. Now, no doubt an ideal language would not break down whatever happens. In doing physics, for example, our language is tightened up. Here, Wittgenstein would disagree, I think correctly. His implicit suggestion is that we have no examples of a presuppositionless language. It is a philosophical chimera. None of our language games contain rules which determine verdicts about usage in every conceivable case. So in the end, we have no idea of what this would be. Ordinary communication relies on the world's proceeding ordinarily. This is an important part of the background to Wittgenstein saying that language includes agreement in judgments as well as in definitions. Finally, a general issue Wittgenstein must consider in connection with the notion of fixity of meaning. Concerns the nature of justification. Wittgenstein sees that justification, if taken on a natural and standard philosophical model, is an important support for the picture of language as presuppositionless. I suggested before that the very possibility of there being such a thing as justifying our assertions can seem to rely on those assertions making a definite claim on reality, no matter how the world is. Evidently, the notion of justification at work here is that of complete justification, one in which nothing is implicit. Any fact relied upon is given its due place in the structure of justification. This view of justification crops up repeatedly in the investigations. It is the justification that provides guarantees against any conceivable counter possibility or any conceivable doubt that such justifications must be obtainable is an outcropping of a picture of rationality that Wittgenstein wishes to oppose. And this last bit we can take in one go. There is an analogous view of explanations of meaning that has been at issue throughout the material I've discussed. This is the idea of complete explanations which address any conceivable unclarity or confusion and preclude any possible misunderstanding. Now, an explanation of the meaning of a sentence. On this model would have to include an account of any presuppositions the sentence has. But once these presuppositions are made explicit, they are no longer presuppositions, but rather part of the content of the sentence. Hence, the possibility of such explanations implies that language is presuppositionless. Clearly then, Wittgenstein must go against these views of justification, of knowledge and explanation of meaning. In particular, he must forestall any idea that the justifications and explanations that we actually employ have features that would lead to or require the philosophical construers. He takes up this challenge in paragraphs 82 and forward. He argues that the burdens of the philosophical models impose on explanations or justifications are the products of confusion, that there are no guarantors of the sort envisaged. He emphasizes that for something to function as an explanation requires surroundings provided by the particular circumstances. The interests of the parties concerned, what those parties have in common, and what not and so on. It is these surroundings that give explanations their function and their point. Similar remarks apply to justifications. The philosophical construal, in contrast, envisages context-independent notions. Wittgenstein urges that such notions would be so different from those we actually employ that it is unclear what the value would be, or why we should want them. In an extremely important remark, paragraph 87, he says, an explanation may indeed rest on another one that has been given, but none stands in need of another. Unless we require it to prevent a misunderstanding. One might say an explanation serves to remove or to avert a misunderstanding, one that would occur, but for the explanation, not everyone that I can imagine. It may easily look as if every doubt merely revealed an existing gap in the foundations. So that secure understanding is only possible if we first doubt everything that can be doubted, and then remove all these doubts. The signpost is in order if, under normal circumstances, it fulfills its purpose. in going against the philosophical construals of explanation and justification, Wittgenstein is attacking central features of a picture of what rationality comes to. Early analytic philosophy gave concrete form to that picture by its various working outs of the structure and nature of logic. Wittgenstein says, after admitting that language includes agreement in judgments, not just definitions. This seems to abolish logic, but does not do so. It certainly abolishes logic in the sense of Frege, Russell, or the early Wittgenstein. For the logic in their sense requires the presuppositionlessness that early agreement in judgments denies. The question is whether logic in any sense that supports a notion of rationality is abolished too. Wittgenstein asserts that it isn't. But how the appropriate distinctions between rationality and inclination are then to be sustained. Which is just the question of what appropriate means here, has not yet, to my mind, been sufficiently elaborated. Whether or not they can be sustained And indeed, whether or not we find the sort of view Wittgenstein is urging the least bit congenial, I think it undeniable that what he focuses our attention on, considerations that may well be well springs of notions of fixity of meaning, deterministness of sense, means of portrayal of the world by language, and maybe implicit factors in the way these notions are framed. Is exceptionally important in understanding the views he is opposing. One may wind up rejecting what Wittgenstein is urging. But one cannot deny that his procedures are extraordinarily and importantly illuminating about the nature of the positions developed in early analytic philosophy and still very much with us today. And that concludes Warren Goldfarb's paper. And I will take some quotes, just recharge my glass. Cheers. We have a first sight of already at the very start, at the end of first paragraph of page 86, where we began this reading. And that is also it's a picture. At the end of the first paragraph, we find a sort of summation. Wittgenstein's point, of course, is not to present a theory. It is rather to unravel what leads to one. So in this instance, you can almost say, what leads up to the idea of the presuppositionlessness where language is just connected to facts in a vacuum. And then we go into the fourth chapter, and here the challenge is directly to the picture of language as presuppositionless, or that it has the capacity or the property of presuppositionlessness. One could say, as an explanatory device here, that is not so far from vorhanden in Martin Heidegger. And we are in the presuppositionlessness of language, not thrown into the world. And there are no affordances. And in the paragraphs that comes, he shows that the idea of presuppositionlessness seemed to go against its own assumptions. And the problem is that an example of page 87, Austin is pointing to that if you had a cat for 4 years and then all of a sudden it delivers a philippic, language breaks down. And underneath, very important, and I think that is well worth to be noted. Austin continues, now no doubt an ideal language would not break down whatever happens. In doing physics, for example, our language is tightened up. And here, importantly, Wittgenstein would disagree, according to Goldfarb. Because there are no examples of a presuppositionless language. They are all with their feet on the ground of reality. And as he writes, it's a philosophical chimera that language should be independent of all the relations and happenings of the world, or our intentions, our wishes. If we go to a very important little line here, last paragraph on the same page. there's an analogous view of explanations of meaning that has been at issue throughout the material I've discussed. This is the idea of complete explanations, which addresses any conceivable unclarity or confusion and preclude any possible misunderstanding. And that would be a language detached from reality. And as I said, a chimera. And he's doing a very massive hint on page 88. It is the 7th line. He emphasizes that for something to function as an explanation requires surroundings provided by the particular circumstances, the interests of the parties concerned, what those parties have in common and what not, and so on. It is these surroundings that give explanations that function and that point. So exactly the thing that the presuppositionlessness idea wants to disregard holds those things that are helpful or are the very flesh that we use to explain things. The environment, our needs, our discussions, other people. And in the quote here, paragraph 87, the second sentence there is quite telling. It may easily look as if every doubt merely revealed an existing gap in the foundations, so that secure understanding is only possible if we first doubt everything that can be doubted, and then remove all these doubts. The signpost mentioned before, if under normal circumstances it fulfills its purpose, and here, a bit further down, there is a safety catch, so called brasklapp in Swedish. So the idea of things being connected, of relations, is not the problem. The 5th line on the third, in the 3rd paragraph. This seems to abolish logic, but does not do so. It certainly abolishes logic in the sense of Frege, Russell, or the early Wittgenstein. For the logic in their sense requires the presuppositionlessness that agreement in judgments denies. So we have agreement in judgments instead of presuppositionlessness. And we have communal doings, and of course we have the life world of Wittgenstein, the shared world where we live. So in this short, very condensed article, Warren Goldfarb managed to show what leads to the sustained idea of presuppositionlessness, and how family resemblance instead of identity or sameness is the first step of softening the ground that drags us, making it more lenient to understanding. Family resemblance is very important. And I think beyond this text, it should be repeated frequently. And by practice, you will come to understand more and more that family resemblance is sort of an antidote to the fixity. He goes further in the article to see how the mistaken idea of sameness and identity leads to sort of a world that is no longer present in our world and is in need of mental images, internal language, thinking, also following rules and different signposts, a sort of in the language inherent rule machinery that automatically constructs sentences and doings and is of no need of presuppositions, facts, or realities is a better word. I think better stay away from fact because it's used in an Augustinian way. The relations of the world comes back. Then he names names. What is it in a name to depict something? A chair depicting a chair. And he looks at the underlying idea of presuppositionlessness, and he shows that the rule for a chair really does not work. or any other rules for name words. They do not deliver. Yes, perfect, very good. Here we have you rules ready for such cases? Rules saying whether one may use the word chair to include this kind of thing. Even such an easy word as chair is in dire need of context, a background, and does not work without presuppositions. And as the pages go on in this condensed, we more and more understand what in ourselves caused the want and, I would say, the belief in presuppositionlessness. Where does it stem from? So he goes much beyond those people who criticize logic but never explain how did the idea of presuppositionlessness develop in ourselves? From where does it stem? If you, so to speak, to make an illness analogy, if you want to fix the illness, you need to know what caused it. If it's an allergy, you might want to remove the philippic cat to ease an up allergy. And this is what Wittgenstein-Goldfog does. Shows how it evolves, how it developed. So maybe some comments here from my dear colleague, Kalle.
Yes.
Move that chair, table a little bit to the highway.
Let's go to page 87. Page 87. So I have then here, page 7. It's here. And what surprises me is that here it is this paragraph which begins with finally. Goldfarb begins to speak about justification. It's a surprise because he doesn't give any examples of justification. So it comes a little bit abruptly to me, this paragraph about justification on this page 87. And Hans, can you give an example or explain what is justification? Because Goldfarb doesn't really explain it anywhere. So why is justification a remedy, so to say? Okay, we don't have any fixity of meaning, but why do we have justification instead in language? What is justification really in this? I could actually read this paragraph.
Yes, please.
Finally, a general issue Wittgenstein must consider in connection with the notion of fixity of meaning. Considers the nature of justification, Wittgenstein sees that justification, if taken on a natural and standard philosophical model, is an important support for the picture of language as presuppositionless. I suggested before that the very possibility of there being such a thing as justifying our assertions can seem to rely on those assertions making a definite claim on reality, no matter how the world is. So let me repeat this or rephrase this last phrase. So Goldfarb suggested before that the fact that you can justify all assertions, all claims, it would not be possible if we don't take in consideration how the world is. But Goldfarb seems to say the opposite. Let's say that I would say the world is round. I would know how to use that round actually used in a specific sense.
Let me just stop you there.
Okay.
This is why this slow read of Wittgenstein, Goldfarb is so important. There are some hints in the text here, although they can be easily lost. Wittgenstein sees that justification, if taken on a natural and standard philosophical model, is an important support for the picture of language as presuppositionless. So justification can be a support. Justification may be in terms of rules a priori or other things for the how did the idea of presuppositionlessness evolve? And the last sentence on that paragraph, I think it reinforces that interpretation. That such justifications must be, in principle at least, obtainable, is an outcropping of a picture of rationality that Wittgenstein wishes to oppose. This is the complexity of the text is that it has, so to speak, two voices. One showing how did the need for presuppositionless evolve? Where does it stem from? So I can understand where it is in me and others. And justifications here is, according to Wittgenstein, Goldfarb, could be an outcropping, a sort of variety of a picture of rationality that Wittgenstein wishes to argument against.
Okay, it makes sense. So let me paraphrase it. Justification means that you justify yourself saying that language has a priori rules. So you justify language having rules beforehand. So that is justification. I was thinking justification more in religious sense, but okay, so justification is about justifying that language has a priori rules. Okay, it makes sense. Okay. Now it's actually makes now this paragraph is clear. Thank you. Justification means that you justify that language has a priori rules, which according to Wittgenstein there are no a priori rules.
Yes, and he doesn't want to argue that there are no solely. He wants to show there's two Also in the philosophical investigations and in Zettel, there is always this two tendency to show how did the need for presuppositionlessness evolve so that I can find it in myself. And he gives examples of presuppositionlessness, and those can be mistaken for the views of Wittgenstein. But this is exactly how his tactic is played out.
Okay, thank you. Let me go to the next page. So today I began with 2 questions. I will now go to my second question. It's in this quotation from Wittgenstein, paragraph 87. You read this earlier, but what does it really mean? Let me read it again. It may easily look as if every doubt merely revealed an existing gap in the foundations, so that secure understanding is only possible if we first doubt everything that can be doubted and then remove all the doubts. The signpost is in order if under normal circumstances it fulfills its purpose. So what does Wittgenstein mean here? If every doubt. Does Wittgenstein mean that it would be mad to doubt too much? In everyday situations we don't doubt. Or what does it mean? Does he mean?
Yeah, it's yeah, definitely, yeah. It's an idea I entertained myself for many years, and so did René Descartes. I think he did it, even wrote it explicitly. First doubt everything, then build on that. It could possibly be called the skeptical view, but I'm not 100% sure there. So, so to speak, let me give you an example. You and me, or the previous you and me, 10 years ago, I would say, how do we know I refer to a chair? And you would say, let us doubt that you can say the word chair, that it can be easily understood. Let's look at what sort of justifications do we have for saying that there is a chair in front of us. So with the doubt, one could possibly say, comes the need for a priori rules or justifications. And the concluding sentence here, I take to be, therefore, the signpost is in order if under normal circumstances it fulfills its purpose. But once you're starting to doubt, I'm going out on a limb here, but it's almost like then this discussion we had 10 years ago, this imaginary discussion, would lead for us to have a need for imagined signposts to assure that we are now talking about the chair. You familiar with the expression proxy?
Yeah, vaguely, but in which context?
But we can, it's like a replacement. You were before safe and sure, so to speak.
Mm.
And now you are uncertain and you need a signpost. You need some a priori rules to hold on to.
Mm. Now, in this case, the ridiculous signpost would be somebody would have, let's say the librarian would actually put a signpost, a literal signpost, chair.
Yeah, or anything. Yeah.
It might serve a purpose, of course, if there is a English speaking here who needs to learn the word chair in Swedish, then it would serve a purpose.
Yeah.
Okay, then it's
And this is in a more complicated way exactly what Noam Chomsky is doing. He's giving more and more rules that covers all the doubts he has. So you see, it's not, it sounds what he wants to show Goldfarb and Wittgenstein. You should have doubts, but not in this case.
No.
Because it would lead you to
Paranoia.
Yeah. You will doubt the reality of your own world in not a very nice fashion.
There was these two cases. Then I can say something else here. Let me go to the example with the cat from Austin, and then I will conclude perhaps. So let me see. Where did we have the example of the cat? It was the previous page, 87, I think. Yes, indeed, from Austin. So it's the speaking cat. Cat which delivers Philippix. And this reminds us of what Wittgenstein said, that lion, even if it would speak, we wouldn't understand it.
No, exactly.
And then Austin speaks about the other language and comparing it with physics. And we have the example of Rovelli's relational quantum physics. And there we don't have any existences. Instead, we have only relationships. In this case, we could, it describes very well. It fits very well what Wittgenstein's image of family resemblance.
Oh yeah.
In families, what do you have? You have relationships, and you don't question what is father, what is a father. It is a rather stupid question, perhaps. It's about more about relationships, like a healthy family. And so also in physics, we have relationships in physics. We don't have existences, but relationships. But I do like this phrase by Austin, ordinary language breaks down in extraordinary cases, because it works on two levels. I don't know if that was Austin's point, but here you have actually the cat which speaks, and cat that can speak actually breaks down language. But then we have to also say, is this a real cat? It's our language that is breaking down, according to Austin. In reality, cats cannot speak. That is not because everything depends on relationships, and there will be no relationship between us and the cat.
No.
Not a real relationship, because the life world is different. So let us conclude there, Hans.
Well, thank you very much, and just let me comment here. I think Ulf Wittgenstein is there agreeing with Austin, the first quote. Because, of course, language breakdown. We have no way of describing this fantastic cat. But on the view of tightening up language in physics, there is no agreement. Why, thank you very much, Kalle Lundahl. So good to have you here, directly, physically present. And thank you everyone for listening in. Have a very pleasant morning, day, afternoon. Bye-bye for now.